Thank you for watching This Old Thing. Welcome back. I'm Jessie. And today we're going to be reading The Girl in the Centerfold. We're on chapter 11. This is by Surrey Marshe. She was Playboy's Playmate of the Month 1967 for January. She wrote this book in 1969. So she was in her 20s when she wrote this book in the 60s. And it is such a cool and interesting insight into Playboy history, and if you're into that. And if you're into any of the Playboy memoirs, like Down the Rabbit Hole, which I have right here by Holly Madison. Oops. Or any of those other Playboy history books or The Secrets of Playboy, you will find so many interesting parallels and really cool evidence and just a really cool perspective from someone who was there when Playboy was only 15 years old. So we're on to chapter 11, Playboy Promotions. If you need to get any of the previous chapters, go to the playlist and it starts with chapter 1 and you can find it all there. So thank you so much for joining. Chapter 11, the Playboy Promotions. Late in December 1966, I went by train to New Brunswick, New Jersey, to do my first Playboy Promotions. According to instructions I had received from Rene Rossini, I was to present a lifetime subscription to a Mr. Brown, as I'll call him, and say, "Mr. Brown, I'd like to present you with a lifetime subscription to Playboy." What could be simpler? "Mr. Brown, here's your monthly fantasy as long as you live, lots of skin, several outsized boobies, and a few delicious bottoms in every issue, and all just for you." I looked forward to the experience with anticipation. It was a chance to travel out of New York, and the newness of going out on my own to meet Playboy's public was exciting. For the occasion, I was attired in the Playboy promotion costume, which means I looked rather like a cheerleader. The costume consisted of a pleated white skirt and a fitted black sweater. On the back of the sweater was a large white Playboy emblem and the word Playboy in 2-inch letters. A smaller emblem was emblazoned over my left breast. The outfit looked nice, but needless to say, I wore a coat over it. My, those Pennsylvania Railroad trains are warm. I was met in Brunswick by a very nice man. He was pleasant, gentlemanly, and sober as he drove me to a country club where Mr. Brown was awaiting me. Oh, I haven't read this chapter yet, and I have a bad feeling. Oh, I'm scared. Okay. I don't recall what we chatted about on the drive. Okay, so I forgot to say this at the beginning, which I usually do at everyone. Trigger warning for this whole book because the whole thing is very triggering and you never know what's going to be popping up in this book. Okay. I was met in Brunswick by a very nice man. He was pleasant, gentlemanly, and sober as he drove me to a country club where Mr. Brown was awaiting me. I don't recall what we chatted about on the drive, but nothing occurred to forewarn me about what lay ahead. At the country club, I was led to a banquet room on the lower floor. At the country club, I was led to a banquet... Why can't I say banquet? At the country club, I was led to a banquet room on the lower floor. The door was opened, and I was escorted... Pause. Let me just get some water. We'll try this again. Actually, no, I'm just gonna get a sip of coffee. Okay. Okay, so guys who are on TikTok Live, just note, you can listen to this chapter on its own. It's like a standalone chapter. It's totally fine. But if you like it and you want to get more, go to the playlist on my channel at my link in bio, and you can start from chapter 1. Okay. Oh, sorry about that. I get so tongue-tied on this like vintage book language. Okay. And I'm also probably tongue-tied because she's like saying something bad's gonna happen. I'm like, no. Okay. At the country club, I was led to a banquet room on the lower floor. The door was opened and I was escorted. The door was opened and I was escorted inside. Surprise! Everybody screamed. I certainly was surprised, but I wasn't supposed to be. The surprise was for Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown, it seems, was the big boss of a business enterprise. I never did get the details straight. Who was resigning or retiring or being transferred. A farewell party was being held for him, with about 35 of his business associates present. All were men. I was the only female. The farewells had obviously been going on for some time, for Mr. Brown and his The farewells had obviously been going on for some time, for Mr. Brown and his I'm sorry, guys. Mr. Brown and his subordinates were sauced. Subordinates were sauced. Subordinates were sauced. The room reeked of alcohol. The first guy who came up to me, he was sort of head reveler, put his face close to mine and exclaimed, "Heavens!" I instantly recoiled from his breath. He was human mace. Heavens, but you're pretty. I was sure his breath had frizzed my hair. I forced a smile. He grabbed my arm. "Come with me, young lady." I had no choice but to accompany him. He led me to a bespectacled gentleman seated near the center of the room. I don't mean to be unkind, but he was of some years and of some paunch. He was surrounded by revelers and obviously under gas attack. "Mr. Brown, this is Miss Marsh. She's a Playmate, Mr. Brown." The guy is like drunkenly talking, so she's spelling it out. "Cheers. You might say she's your personal Playmate." More cheers, loud guffaws. "But only for tonight, unless, of course..." Oh, God. "Mr. Brown, I'm here to present you with your lifetime subscription to Playboy. Congratulations. I'm sure you'll enjoy it." Very loud cheers. "Mr. Brown! Mr. Brown!" Head reveler seemed terribly displeased by the noise in the room. He wanted the floor. "Quiet! Quiet!" He stood there, a grown man, a pillar of the community, screaming at the top of his lungs. It worked. The noise, the cheering, subsided. Head reveler was pleased. "Mr. Brown, did you ever..." I can't do his accent. Just assume that this guy is drunk. "Mr. Brown, did you ever think in your whole life that you would see a real live Playmate?" Cheers, sentenced by head reveler's upraised hands. "Do you know what a Playmate is? She's a girl in Playboy magazine with nary a stitch on." He came over to me and put his arm around my waist. I mean way around. I could feel his hand reaching for my breast. I moved away. "Ain't she gorgeous? You ain't seen nothing yet. Okay, honey." He said it like it was a cue. What did he expect? Was I supposed to undress? My God, what had I been sent to? "Okay, honey." He squeezed me with his hand. I tried to stop shivering and think I had to do something, quick. I jerked away from head reveler. "Let's hear it for Mr. Brown." Some fool said, "Hip, hip," and everybody hollered. I was out of it for the moment. I looked at head reveler. He was leering at me, open-eyed expectation on his face. Lord, he actually thought Playboy was sending a nude girl. I looked at the others. It was the same, 35 pairs of eyes, devouring me, undressing me. I was there for their private smoker, Playboy's Playmate sent to be their Playmate. I didn't know whether to cry or run, but I couldn't do either. It was my first promotion. Playboy expected me to be sweet and charming, an excellent representative of the magazine. That's so Bridget. "Miss Marsh." Head reveler advanced towards me. Maybe he stumbled or lurched, but his hand landed heavily on my shoulder. It felt as if he were pulling at my sweater. Please, the word came out half in anger, half pleading. What's the matter? Well, a representative of Playboy, a walking fantasy. I had to use my head. I forced a smile. Why, you haven't even offered me a drink. The last thing I wanted was a drink. I had to keep control or I was dead. But this was all I could think of to say. He was shocked. That's terrible. Somebody get the little lady a drink. That's also like very Kendra, I feel like. Like she and also Anna Nicole, like they take control of the situation from having been strippers. They know how to take control and just manipulate people into like not touching them or not doing stuff they don't want by just directing them to like go get a drink or something like that. Okay. Why don't you get it for me? I smiled my sweetest. He reacted. I might just as well have asked him to my room for the night, and lurched towards the bar. I sighed. I was rid of him for the moment. What to do now? Mr. Brown, an older man, the boss. Surely. I took refuge beside him, asking him if he liked Playboy and how long he'd read it. Somebody suggested a photograph. The posing occupied several minutes. I used the time to think. These guys were businessmen. They were husbands and fathers. They wouldn't harm me. Or would they? Why hadn't Playboy warned me? Why hadn't they sent someone with me? Why hadn't Playboy warned me? Why hadn't they sent someone with me? I felt a hand around my waist. I removed it. Somebody puppied up against my fanny. I moved away. Hey, this ain't her picture. Hey, this ain't her picture. The party favors had been discovered. Under each plate at the dinner table was a centerfold from the magazine. A nude photo to stimulate these guys. Just what they needed. Hey, honey, where are you? I explained I was to be in the next issue. 1 second. I explained I was to be in the next issue. The guys made do, laughing, giggling, whooping, and hollering. Hey, look at these boobies. Solid brick, man, all brick. We should bring that back, actually. Is that what, like, brick house comes from? They exchanged pictures. They shoved them towards me for autographing. They leered at me, making comparisons, I guess. They wanted to know how I liked posing nude. They wanted to know how it felt to pose nude. They wanted to know if I liked Hefner. Everyone, or so it seemed, felt a compulsion to touch me somewhere and had an absolute conviction that it was their right to do so and that I wanted them to. There were fatherly pats, friendly hugs, elbow nudges, pinches, pokes, leans, and out-and-out feels. I received propositions to spend the night or drive me to New York or look me up the next time they were in Manhattan or visit me at the club. What could I do? I smiled and smiled. I kept moving. I tried to keep my back to the wall. After 4 hours, the affair mercifully ended and I left. I did 13 more Playboy promotions, which surely indicated that I am a fool, or a slow learner, or possibly masochistic. Consider my second promotion. On January 24th, 25th, and 26th, I was in Montreal for the opening of the Playboy Club there. It was a major event in the Playboy scheme of things, on a par with the second coming of Christ. Among those enjoying the ribaldry and revelry was man about towner Jesus Christ, shown here with the able-bodied June the Bosom Wilkinson. The press, radio, and television were all in attendance, along with thousands of, as Playboy might put it, masculine Montreal males. The first day began with a press conference. Club officials, headed by Tony Roma, the new general manager. Yes, that is Tony Roma, like the Tony Roma steak place. That's the same guy, just so you guys know. So I guess he learned a lot at general managing the Playboy Club. Tony Roma, the new general manager, were seated at a table along with Playboy executives from Chicago and local Canadian dignitaries. There were 3 of us there in our cheerleader's costume: a bunny, a girl who had been a Playmate 7 years previously, and me. So it's interesting that for promotions they use these cheerleader costumes, even though they had the bunny outfits. They didn't use them for promotions like they do a little bit later. There were 3 of us there in our cheerleader's costume: a bunny, a girl who had been a Playmate 7 years previously, and me. I was the star attraction, for I was the current Playmate. As per instructions, I said, "My name is Surrey Marshe. I'm the Playmate for January 1967. It was January 1967. The rest of the day and the next, I went from room to room in the club signing autographs. Everybody, it seems, had a copy of the magazine, and everybody wanted me to autograph the Centerfold picture. I don't know what goes on in a man's mind when he walks up to a strange girl, hands her a nude photograph of herself, and asks her to autograph it. He must receive sexual titillation from it. It must be a thrill, if only because it has to be a rather uncommon experience. In my case, men become rather excited, for if you look at the picture, you'll see that the only place where writing will show up is my fanny. I'd scrawl, "Best wishes, Surrey Marshe," across my hindy, and each guy would, well, did you ever see a grown man wag his tail? It would seem logical that after thousands of autographs, I'd get used to the experience of strangers looking at a nude picture of me and saying inevitably, "You're so pretty," or "You have a gorgeous figure." I guess I got used to it. At least I became quite callous about it. It was my job. I was being paid. I was expected to smile sweetly and sign my name. I tried not to think about anything else, just to do it and do it and do it. I really tried, but every time some stranger handed me the Centerfold to autograph, it was, well, he might as well have walked up and slapped me in the face. Then there were the radio and television interviews. One sec. Thank you for the roses, guys. I just gotta turn this down so that way, as I'm reading, when I save my video, I don't have like the sounds of the roses. Thank you so much. Okay. I get a little sip of water too. Okay. Every time some stranger handed to me the Centerfold to autograph, it was, well, he might as well have walked up and slapped me in the face. Then there were the radio and television interviews. Invariably, they were conducted by men who considered themselves bold, extremely witty, and I wonder if she ever had to read this book out loud, because there are so many words that are hard to say. Invariably, they were conducted by men who considered themselves bold, extremely witty, and irrepressibly clever. At first, I was embarrassed and insulted and angry. These guys were putting me down, and I couldn't do a thing about it. I was there on behalf of Playboy and being paid by Playboy. I was there to smile sweetly and look pretty and answer with the sort of crap these guys wanted to hear. "Tell me, Miss Marshe, how does it feel to be a Playmate?" Oh, just fine. Marvelous. How did it happen? How did you happen to, well, pose au naturel, so to speak? I was asked. I thought it might be interesting and saw nothing wrong with it, so I agreed. Aren't you sorry? Oh no, not a bit. Biggest thrill of my life. For the benefit of our radio audience, I'm looking at the picture of Miss Marsh that appears in the current issue of Playboy magazine, now on your newsstand. Tell me, Miss Marsh, how does it feel to have strange men looking at a nude picture of you? I'm not ashamed of it. The nude has always inspired sculptors and artists. I consider the photograph of me to be just another expression of creative arts. I must say, you sure were created well. Thank you very much. But how did you feel when you were standing there, posing, in the buff, so to speak? Shy, but the photographer was very nice. He didn't make me feel nude. You're also a bunny? Yes, I'm a door bunny in the New York club. You wear the bunny costume? Yes. With the ears and the cottontail? Yes. It really gives a girl a lot of, well, exposure, don't you think? Don't you think it looks nice? A bikini shows more. Hear that, folks? Miss Surrey Marshe, the current Playmate of the Month. You'll find her on your newsstands. Literally all of her. Thinks a bikini is more revealing than a bunny costume. I hope all you girls heard that. I've often wondered about that costume, Miss Marsh. Doesn't a girl have to be, well, large and the, you know what I mean? Not really. All kinds of girls are bunnies. They come in all sizes, but she should be well proportioned. Hear that, all you well-proportioned girls. You too can be a bunny, and maybe a playmate, like our Miss Surrey Marshe, the current Playmate of the Month. You ought to pick up a copy of the January Playboy. She's a stunner, a real knockout. Thank you, Miss Marsh. Playboy's Playmate of the Month. I don't mean to put the interviewers down. They were only doing their jobs. And they were asking the questions that are on the lips of everyone, the why and how of posing nude. Assuming they wanted to get into the matter in some depth, my answers were calculated to prevent it. And what else could I do? How could I tell them about Pompeo Posar and Store Elfdoll and what it's like to come to America? And working for Playboy, how could I say anything? The slightly... And working for Playboy, how could I say anything the slightest bit critical of Playboy? My instructions were to be pretty, sweet, and smile a lot. If the result is an empty-headed exhibitionist, isn't that the product Playboy is selling? The next promotion was in Chicago. I think it was the Retail Merchants Association, but I could be wrong. If I am, I apologize to the Retail Merchants Association, whatever you are. It was a large convention, and Playboy put on the first coming of Christ with no less than 6 playmates. Right here on our stage, ladies and gentlemen, 6 gorgeous nudes. Sue Bernard, Lisa Baker, Tish Howard, Kelly Burke, Diane Chandler, and I. The Playboy booth was large and displayed a new service Playboy was offering advertisers. There was a long spiel we had to memorize. Such is the human mind, that having rendered the spiel umpteen times a day for 5 days, One sec, water break. Water break. Okay. And guys on TikTok Live, don't forget that you can start this with chapter 1. You're welcome to listen to this chapter, but you can go start chapter 1 by going to my link in bio. Go to my YT channel, and there's a playlist there. It's called The Girl in the Centerfold. Oh. Dun dun dun, we lost our place. Okay, I found it. A few. Okay. There was a new service Playboy was offering advertisers. There was a long spiel we had to memorize. Such is the human mind that having rendered the spiel umpteen times a day for 5 days, I can't remember a word of it. I don't even remember what it's about. If I ever knew. I think it was a computer service, but I'm not sure. The booth was very striking, with posters and charts attached to tinfoil walls. The main attractions were we Playmates. We were costumed as space girls. We wore silver sweaters and silver bejeweled miniskirts over silver tights and silver boots. We had little silver antennae sticking out of our heads and carried a flashlight in the form of a space gun. As space girls, we escorted groups of visitors through the display. It was clever, and the Playboy executive who thought it up has now been put in charge of Kleenex disposal throughout the entire Playboy empire. What? On the 1st of March, I opened a clothing store in Mobile, Alabama. On March 8th, I spent 12 hours in the shoe department of Litt's department store in Philadelphia. March 31st saw me opening a motorcycle center in Hyannis, Massachusetts. April 8th, I was smiling and handing out brochures at the Playboy booth at the National Association of Tobacco Dealers convention at the Hilton Hotel in New York. April 21st, I attended a fraternity party at Columbia College in New York. The kids were afraid of me, and I didn't stay long. 6 days later, I was in Cleveland at the Tux shop. Later, I opened men's stores in New Britain, Connecticut, and Johnstown and Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania. One promotion truly excited Playboy. In the January 1968 reprise of the previous year's Playmates, Playboy mentioned that I had addressed a class at the Harvard School of Business. That's not quite right. On June 10th, I went to Cambridge. On June 10th, I went to Cambridge to the Harvard School of Business, but it was the 10th reunion of the class of 1957 that I addressed. The difference is significant, moving the episode out of education into entertainment. Playboy was obviously impressed by any Harvard connection. I could go alone to New Brunswick and be with 35 drunks, but at Harvard I was accompanied by 2 public relations men who were very worried about what I was going to say. I was escorted to a large campus building and into a classroom. At least, I think it was a classroom. The seats were arranged in tiers, all of them facing me, and filled with 100 or more smiling men, all of whom thought it was a gas to see a real, live Playmate, even if she were wearing a cheerleader's costume. Rah, rah, sis boom ba. Give me an S, give me a K, give me an I, give me an N. Playboy, Playboy, Playboy. I thought I made a very nice little speech. I told them about myself and coming to this country, and being a bunny and a Playmate, and answered the usual questions. Art, man, art. The Harvard alumni seemed to enjoy it. At least they laughed a lot. The public relations men even smiled a little. I've tried to describe my adventures as a Playboy promoter with some humor, but in truth I consider the promotions to be Playboy's basest and least savory activity. The girl who has posed nude in the magazine is put on exhibition. Thus, the promotions are a form of, to put the matter bluntly, flesh peddling. That's right, flesh peddling. A sign in the store clearly stated who I was and why I was there. Appearance of Miss Surrey Marshe, Playmate of the Month, January 1967, courtesy of Cleveland Tux Shop, or whatever. I know that my 2-cheek, 1-booby photo was my only claim to fame. I realized that nobody would flock, camera in hand, to a tux shop to see me if I hadn't posed nude. I submit that that fact is what makes it flesh peddling. The people are there to see the girl they have already seen nude. Water break. I want my coffee, but it doesn't moisturize. It just makes my mouth more dry. Okay. I don't know what goes on in men's minds when they see a Playmate. I suspect they are disappointed. After all, they had seen ads saying a Playmate would appear at the store. It would be natural to expect her to be nude. At least the most common reaction was, oh, she has clothes on. Playboy has spent 15 years trying to convince the world that it is perfectly natural, normal, and respectable for a girl to pose nude. The campaign has flopped. Posing nude is still unnatural, abnormal, and disreputable. I didn't know it when I did it, but I do now, that posing nude puts the girl beyond the pale of respectability. She wins approval from absolutely no one. Neither men nor women respect her. When she allows herself to mingle with the public, posing for photographs and signing autographs, and allows herself to be advertised as the girl who posed nude, she is being presented as a freak, the sideshow on Main Street. Ooh, interesting. From Playboy's viewpoint, their promotion is simply the use of a pretty girl to sell magazines, shoes, motorcycles, or whatever, long standard practice in American advertising. But there is a significant difference between the Dodge Girl and Surrey Marshe. I had appeared nude in Playboy and am thereby disreputable. The Dodge Girl is a pretty girl who is respectable. Name one major advertiser who has risked identification with Playmates or nudes. The only use for the Playmate is the one Playboy makes in its promotions as a freak to get the crowd in. Step right up, ladies and gentlemen. You too can have your own highly personal autograph of Miss Surrey Marshe right on her bare little fanny. Step right up, ladies and gentlemen. You too can see in person this lovely young lady whom you have heretofore seen only in photographic likeness. Step right up, ladies and gentlemen. You too can see a young lady who has removed her attire and posed for photographs seen by millions and millions of men the world over. Step right up. That I allowed myself to be used in this way is my biggest shame from my Playboy activities. Yet, the Playboy Promotions were an important course in the education of Solveig Mellenborgen. I believe that everything, while not necessarily working out for the best, serves some purpose in a person's life. Doing the Playboy Promotions changed me. When Playboy sent me down to New Brunswick with the 35 drunks, it was like shoving me off the dock to see if I could swim. I didn't drown in Brunswick. I survived very nicely in what I would have thought of as a terrifying situation if I'd known about it in advance. I discovered, too, that I could survive the smirking interviews. Doing the promotions, I learned to handle myself in a variety of public situations. I learned to smile and be sweet regardless of how I felt or what I thought of the person or what he had done. I learned to walk and stand and develop pat answers for tough questions. None of it turned out to be terribly difficult. In short, if I wasn't the immigrant girl hot off the boat, name tag attached, when I began the promotions, I was at least Miss Dum Dum. When I finished doing promotions, I was still Miss Dum Dum, but a poised Miss Dum Dum. During the time I was doing promotions for Playboy, changes were occurring in my personal life which also contributed significantly to my education. Again, this is difficult to talk about, but it is part of the story. My affair with Biff lasted about 6 months. We had a fall and winter, but no spring and summer. There was no quarrel which sundered us. Our romance didn't end with some passionate spat filled with accusations and recriminations. We just came apart like a frayed string, slowly and with no great feeling of loss. String is cheap. Lots of people have it. In our case, the poetry stopped. The love notes ended. The romantic evenings turned into lengthy sessions before the boob tube. Boredom, thy name was Biff. I began dating others. Continuing to practice a monogamous affair became rather dishonest. Besides, Biff turned out to be expensive. He suffered from a persistent short circuit in his earning power. I made several repairs by paying the rent and buying groceries. I even bought him a second-hand I even bought him a second-hand car he wanted. In all, I invested about $700 in Biff. The price got to be too high. I'm grateful for Biff. I learned a lot from him. I also consider myself lucky. I might have married him in other circumstances. If I had, a divorce would have been inevitable. I'm no Puritan about divorce, but I'm sure divorce is more complicated and expensive, both financially and emotionally, than breaking off an affair. I just packed my bag and moved out of Biff's apartment. No lawyers, no settlement. Marriage would have made it far more difficult. As a result of Biff, I'm in no great hurry to marry. When I do, I know I'll be more selective than I would have if there had never been a Biff. A girl has to think about what she and that gorgeous guy will do after the romance, with its wine and poetry and red bikini bottoms, ends. During the time I was doing promotions and shortly after I broke up with Biff, something else happened which is of course important to this story. The something else was Louis. Who is Louis? Chapter 12. Louis. Dun dun dun. Who is he? We don't know. Who is he? We don't know. Alright, guys. That concludes chapter 11. And we will pick up with chapter 12. There's only a couple chapters left. If you want to go back and read any or listen to any of the previous chapters, go to the playlist called The Girl in the Centerfold, and you can start with chapter 1. So thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.